You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with today's guest, author and fairy witch Daniela Simina, back for part 2 of our fairy herbs and fairy magic conversation, and me, your host, Vicky Benison. I'm still whirling from our last visit with Daniela. It went so fast, we didn't even get into fairy gardens. So that's going to be our focus today. Whether we start whirling or not, we're going there. And a quick introduction for those who may not have been here last time. Daniela is not only a fairy witch and an author, she also teaches yoga, as well as teaching classes and speaking on other esoteric subjects. So, Daniela, thank you for returning so quickly so we could finish this conversation and disrupting your Thursdays to do so. Congratulations on the release of Fairy Herbs and Fairy Magic this last September 30th. So that was last Friday?
Yeah, Friday.
And I lose track of time. And welcome to Fika.
Thank you so much for having me again in the studio today. And thanks once again to our lovely audience. I hope some of you are returning from the previous episode so we can build up our conversation on what we have left behind. And you told me that you were impatient, to come back and finish the conversation. I cannot tell you how impatient I was because 1 hour felt like 20-ish minutes, honestly. And there was like so much to still discuss on that. Yeah. So
I know I went through, I re-listened to it because I don't remember being here. It was so fast. So I had to re-listen to it to see what we had thrown in and what we had left out so we could get back to things today.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the liberty after rewatching that in the conversation of communicating with our good neighbors, our fairy partners. I put it down to the 3 R's because I need things simple to remember: respect, research, and relationship building.
Whoa, it's like the best synthesis. It's like respect and that applies, that goes across where you're talking about fairies, or you're talking about deity, or you're talking about the neighbor, the person who lives across, from you. That respect, and then research, absolutely. And that extends to everything. So why would not apply to fairy? When I say everything, let's say that you're going to travel and for a while work, let's put it this way. Let's say that you're going to work abroad. You have to research. You have to know about food. You need to know how you interact with people, what is appropriate and not appropriate to say or do in public, in private, and so on. So why would it be different, from interacting with other worldly beings? Fairies in this situation. Go do your research, and then building relationships. I like this. I really have this example, and it's also in the book. I'm mentioning it. It's something like neighbor just moves in across from you, and you just barge in their yard at their door with your kid. Hey, I brought you my kid. Can you watch him for 2 hours? Because I want to go watch a movie. I don't think that's the right way to start building a relationship. What about going to your neighbors? Knock, knock, knock. Hello, this is a cup of coffee for you. I don't know you like coffee, but I thought that you might. So if you don't, let me know. I would like to invite you. Come over and start talking and get to know them and what they like and after a while we become friends. Then maybe they would be willing, to watch your kid for a couple of hours. But it's building relationships. So it's a progression, totally.
No, and letting them settle in and possibly even inviting them, as you said, come to my house for coffee first, inviting them into your world. On that note, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say on that, exactly on that note, probably we're like thinking the same thought. There is, if you're gonna look into Irish folklore and into not only Irish but many sources, European sources about fairies, pretty much there is a consensus about the fact that they're best left alone. So people not to be going there, and this is something that we still kind of left it open-ended question last time, I remember, and I really wanted to come back to it. So a lot of lore and folklore and older traditions, so prior to the Victorian era, prior to the Theosophy, who teaches us that they really, these fairy things, they don't have any powers, and it's us humans, who actually empower them. So before these trends sneaking into our culture and modifying what we think, we believe, and what we think we can do regarding fairies, so before that, the consensus was that you got to stay away. Now, there is obviously, don't stay away. You can tell, right? I'm a fairy witch. So, and then there is the other side of the spectrum where, yeah, sure, they're all cute. They're all nice. They can't wait, to build human partnerships. And I personally stand somewhere in the middle. I saw my grandmother. I grew up watching my grandmother working too, but working in partnerships with these beings, fairies, and she had like very specific entities labeled fairies that would come in Romanian, Zune, that's the name, that would come around her, and I could see them sometimes. So it was something happening right there in front of me. So I know that working with them is something. And I found out, not only from my grandmother, but later on researching the body of lore and folklore of Europe, that certain people are called, are prompted, are invited, drawn into relationships with fairies. And we can do a whole episode about this. I'm speaking about this in the book that's been just released, Fairy Herbs for Fairy Magic, which I don't happen to have a copy nearby, if that's even possible. And yeah, sorry. So some people are called, and called doesn't mean that you have to have this supernatural, natural, mind-blowing experience, this towering being of light showing up in your bedroom and say, here I am, I'm calling for you to follow my path. It doesn't have to be anything like this. You may just find yourself genuinely intrigued and curious, and the more you research and you read about fairies in a certain culture, things start happening around you. And that might be a sign that you have been invited to explore such a partnership. Now, how far it would go, I cannot tell. That's for the individual person to try out and see. In the paradigm described by the 3 R's, respect, research, and relationship building. So that's where I stand, and this is how you can approach. Yes, you have a call, you have a curiosity, but before anything, just ask yourself genuinely, why am I doing this? Sometimes it's a very strong pull. It's your heart, it's your whole being telling you, you have to pursue this. Pursue it. But it's just, I want to do it because that person is also doing it, and I don't want to be any less. That's maybe not the right reason, to get into relationships with fairy beings.
That was my question, actually. Because you don't always see a fairy, how do you know that you were being called? Daniela, it's starting to get scary. So
No, it's just starting.
So, and also because of the popularity, their increase in popularity, I would say, because of their increase in popularity, there are going to be those who'd suddenly decide, well, this is the way to go to make a few bucks, right?
Yes.
They're being called financially, not specifically. And I think we should think about, I don't know the lore specifically, but in my head pops the story of the leprechaun's pot of gold.
Same. I mean, it was the exact same thought. It's like, yeah, sure. Let's see.
Go and try that. But if you feel the calling, you feel that calling from the time of childhood, you've always been reaching to get more information about our good neighbors, and you've learned, and to be they don't like you talking about them a lot, as far as like the fairies did this for me. And well, it depends if you have a calling and you're sharing that knowledge, getting rid of the fairy propaganda and doing it as a
Mm-hmm.
mission. That's a little different than bragging, I saw a fairy,
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
did
yeah.
this. So when we talk about people, we had talked about how it is, you are diminished somehow as a person if you believe in fairies, and it can be because only silly people believe in fairies, and it's childish, and it has been put to that point. Not my opinion, people just out there. You don't have to go out and talk about this. You can
Absolutely.
just do your thing and celebrate within yourself, because it doesn't matter if other people know. It's what's in your heart that
Oh,
matters.
absolutely.
We Unless of course you want to get rid of the fairy propaganda, and you know
Um,
put more research out there, more work into it, right?
I have a few thoughts on it. So I see like two facets like of the same coin here. On one, yes, you're called to work with fairies, or whatever the reasons, whatever messages, style of messages you've gotten into, you've received, it got you into working with fairies. I promise I can speak. And then there's that side of you who is very happy because you feel that you found your voice and you found your place and everything's going so wonderful, and you want to share because it's so good to have some community to share this path with, and that's beautiful. But if you will notice, most of the people who work in partnerships with fairies have fairy familiars. They walk really solitary paths. So mine is fairly solitary. I mean, I have, when I practice, when I do anything involving fairies that happens here at my house, I'm by myself. I mean, I'm the only human involved. The rest are the fairy, participants. I do have, however, people with whom I can discuss, exchange ideas, learn from. So that's a great thing to have, community. And now
A safe community.
a safe community, exactly. And if you do not have the community, maybe you get to the point where you can start creating that community. So you may have like a friend, close friend, trusted one with whom you can share tidbits. They don't have to be like a fairy witch to the same extent as you are, but kind of sharing tidbits, participating somehow, or just listening, to what your adventures are. And sometimes the request to keep things private to yourself is very obvious, is clearly stated. I have things that I'm told you do not disclose any of these because you'll pay with your life. So you don't disclose. My grandmother, I remember she had, I never saw her doing specific rituals in the presence of anybody. And I was spying. This is how I ended up seeing those rituals. I mean, I was hidden. I was like, it's not. So that was supposed to be secret, which obviously wasn't. And then you have the other side of the story where you are given homework. And by the way, fairies, when you get like in this kind of relationships, you're getting homework, lots of it. You're required to research, to do things in a certain way. And then it's like, okay, you have to write. You have to be a voice. This is how I ended up writing 3 books about them in less than 2 years. You have to write. You have to, be an active voice. You have to be an active presence. And this is what we actually want you to write about. So they're pretty specific. You have to popularize this and this, because there is the counter current of kind of resetting what has gone downhill in terms of fairy beliefs and approach to fairy beliefs. What you're saying, the infantilization. They're cute, and because they're cute, they're only for children, and whoever believes in fairy stories and the occult and the paranormal, it's not really paranormal, it's normal, it's just a different kind of normal. But whoever believes in that is childish or uneducated or suffers from some mental condition, which, by the way, just having this discussion, I believe yesterday with some friends, it is a difference in between, and it should be taken very seriously when somebody has hallucinations that indicate a pathology, versus chemical imbalances in the brain versus having genuine spiritual experiences. So sometimes the line is thin, but it's good to ascertain that everything is all right from the neurological and psychiatric
You can go talk
point
to
of view.
someone. If you're concerned about yourself,
Yes,
go talk to a therapist, talk to
absolutely. Absolutely.
your whoever about this that knows.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can't always trust those closest to us. They want to save our feelings, or they don't
yeah.
want us to be acting differently. They don't want people to think poorly of us. So there are times when going to someone professional
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
And I would just like to say, Robin is here today, Robinsons, and he says, "Good morning, Vicky and Daniela. Having a rough day at
Good
work here.
morning.
Came to the right place for some calming, positive energy." And I just want to say, Robin, if you had seen us before the show, you would consider us calming. You would say, "Calm down," but that wouldn't work with us. It would only make it worse. We were on a roll. And so those are the important things to know, to just have the right intentions, be aware of everything around you, and just like you would if you met a new person or you went out on a date or whatever, until you get to know what you're doing with this person, it's important to be cautious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's get to fairy gardens, and which covers a whole lot of things. Now,
Yes.
when we talk about okay, I'm just going to go for a topic right off that I would like to know about. So, do fairies like to have statues that look what we consider like them? Like, my garden gnome. Or should we just ask them and see what they think about it? Is there a general rule or an individual one?
The only general rule that applies to working with fairies is be cautious.
Okay, we have one rule.
And do your, so that's probably the only general rule. And when I'm saying be cautious, I don't want to sound like super sinister here. It's like you don't want to offend somebody who speaks a different language or comes from a culture that's completely different from your own, and you want to build a relationship. So be cautious that you don't say or do something that offends them. And then that's also the aspect of some people reacting more violent or than others. So that's kind of
I
about.
think cautious is good. I don't think we should be cautious with everybody. There is not enough. That's not to victim blame. It's your fault if you run into trouble with fairies.
Gosh, no.
It's like going into Central Park in the middle of the night. Okay, it's not wise.
No.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
It's not.
And if you want, and Daniela speaks from experience. So her book,
A Fairy Path.
Yeah, I got that one. A Fairy Path, a fairy seer, young fairy seer in training. The memoir of a young fairy seer in training. Read that, and you will understand why she says what she says. There's a lot of experience behind her books in growing up. So, if we have a feeling that the garden gnome is a happy input in our garden, we leave it there. Will they speak to us that way, or do we have to ask? Should we ask?
Sometimes we just do things, and we do them the right way. It's more than one right way of doing things, but you just get a statue because your sense, your aesthetics, your sense of beautiful. You want to create a more whimsical space, and it's like, yeah, sure, I really like that fairy statue. I know that fairies don't really look like that, or you know. But I really like the statue and what it represents, and I personally like a touch of whimsy, you know, here and there. So even if I know that if I'm getting a gnome or a fairy that's 10 inches height, I know that not all fairies are like that. It's not put there to represent the fairy beings that I'm absolutely trying to invite in my space or create a space for. So in that regard, it shouldn't feel like an offense. It's just an aesthetic, whimsical touch to a space. And if I like my gnome, I like my gnome, and my gnome is going to stay there. Unless if that is a space that the landvater, the spirits of the land have a claim on, and they want it done in a certain way, they will ask, they will make their wishes known to me. So I suggest before placing any statuary, worth checking whether you can psychically relate to the spirits around, or you need to use any divination tool, I don't know, runes, ogham, tarot decks, whatever. Or you can go outside and take omens if you know how, from the flight of birds or anything else from that specific spot that you want to change it, to add the statue to, and see how that feels. And maybe put the gnome there with an offering of, so there is traditional, this depends a lot in what part of the world you are, but for here in North America, tobacco and cornmeal and fresh water, these are very appropriate for the
And
land
I'm thinking
spirits
maple syrup
themselves. Maple syrup, absolutely. But then if there's a leaning more into European type of fairies, which by the way we have plenty who traveled and come across, we encounter them over here, then milk, butter, cream, bread, fresh water, those are, you have a variety to choose from. So when you put the gnome out there, also leave some offerings and acknowledge.
And if the gnomes, I mean, the gnome has been there for many, many years before I considered this, but he's on a pedestal. And I never thought about it till we were just discussing that. But that, despite windstorm, despite snowstorm, despite whatever, that gnome stays on that pedestal. So I'm thinking that's a thumbs up for the gnome.
I was about to say, so that's no, because when they don't like it, in more or less explicable ways, they would get crushed. They would get, you put it in a way and it falls down, and you put it in a way until it crushes, and then you know that it wasn't desired. I had this fixed idea that I have to have like a specific array of stones put in a certain way, and there's no animal capable of going there where I put these stones. That's a while ago, and I kept putting them in a certain way and found them scattered. And I kept putting them again, and I found them scattered. Now these are heavy rocks. It's not like a wind will blow. Where I put them, it's a small animal would not topple them. So, and finding like the foundation, the biggest boulder, rolled like 5-6 feet away, so not just toppled but roll. I'm like, okay, something's happening there. Obviously this arrangement is not welcome here in this formation, and that better stop insisting. Found something else, did divination, figure out what, they just wanted one single vertical pillar like stone. That's it.
So, and when you talk about the whimsy, we do sort of have an idea of, like, there is the other world, fairy world, and then there is what we grew up with as children, which is sort of our personal, like, folklore that was of our time. So, my home backs onto a forest, and I've often thought I want to put a gate so I can walk directly to the forest and ignore the busy world around me.
Nice.
But then the other day I was thinking, what if I put on the bottom of that door a fairy door? And I realized they're not all little, and they're not all small, but it would be an invitation that might bring a smile to their faces. Like, okay, this is saying, and throw a bunch of lavender so I'm not inviting the wrong ones. Note to self, I have to plant lavender if I do that. But I just feel like they're saying, okay, this is not, it's like when you go to a Highland Games or something, everybody's wearing a kilt, but they may not. Yes, gosh, just said so. This becomes sort of a trademark, and with a fairy, do you think they sometimes may think that way? I think they would.
Of course, of course. So I want to say more about fairy doors because this is like super important.
Oh, okay.
The fairy doors, the little actually, let's put that on the back. Put a pin on that for a second. First of all, I don't believe that all fairies have to be small, all fairies have to be big, all fairies have... We know from the lore and folklore that a lot of them look exactly like humans and are very hard to tell apart from humans unless something gives them away. So the majority of encounters are described in the lore, and I'm not talking about lore from 200 years ago, I'm talking about recent events and encounters, 20th, 21st century. So that's that. But this is not to the exclusion of smaller fairies. I never saw a winged fairy, but I do not exclude the possibility for winged fairies to exist and be a type of fairy in their own kind that some people interact with. So I believe they're coming in all sizes and with the most diverse looks we can think of.
Because
now,
as you've pointed out, the word is an umbrella word for many other
absolutely
beings.
Absolutely, yes. The word is an umbrella word. Now, coming back to the doors and portals, whenever we create portals in between dimensions, we have to be prepared, to have like filters, kind of security checks at the airport. We only allow through those who are safe. And this is something that I'm making a big fuss about in the book that I wrote, the last one, Fairy Herbs for Fairy Magic, because you want to have filter-like protections. Because the last thing in this whole entire world is to banish your allies, to put things there that are repelling your own allies and your familiars, and open the gates wide to the other people to come in, exactly the ones that you want to, stay away from. So when you are setting a space dedicated to fairies, and I'm glad that you brought the doors and the portals, because usually you think, okay, they're going to come in here, let me create this nice portal that's both for me to also leave this world and move into a different space, but also for my allies to move from a different space into my world. And I believe that's important and good thing to have. I have such thing in my yard. Fairy doors. So fairy doors, the small ones, the cute ones, and I really like whimsical design and mushrooms and little. I really like it. So I like the aesthetics of it. It has something that I don't know. It's heartwarming. I like the other thing, more like darker as well. So I'm big enough, to encompass polarities. So it shouldn't be this or that. Why not both? So fairy doors, I think it's a 20th century. Yeah, it's 20th century invention. And interesting enough, it started as a fashion, as a trend in Ireland, of all places, in Ireland. So obviously this is either fairies themselves wanting to inch their way towards human children and get there as quickly as possible. So yay, get for your kids this little fairy doors. And I will tell you more about them in a second, because they come with the instructions what your children are supposed to do with it. And I'm like, no, don't do any of that. So yeah, I'm not the only one who says this.
Oh my goodness, I just saw a horror movie. Fairy doors.
Yes. That's exactly horror movie fairy doors. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So that was obviously, you mentioned earlier, people who get into this and kind of commercialize the belief. And obviously they were not like thinking seriously, or they were really prompted by fairies to put these access accessories to the, made them handy for humans, so humans can open the ways, for fairies to easily move in. So these fairy doors come in with a whole package parcel of instruction if you're purchasing them from this manufacturer. And have your child put this in their bedroom of all places. When you are asleep, you're at your most vulnerable, right? And then let them have the children write, their most secret wishes and deepest dreams and desires on a piece of paper and send it through the door. It's like, what are you doing? You are informing otherworldly beings that you have no idea who they are. You are informing about your own child's vulnerabilities. So, and it's also teaching, from a very pragmatic point of view, it's also teaching your kid a very wrong thing: trust strangers and have them learn all your secrets. Instead of finding ways to discuss with mom and dad, just let strangers have at your secrets and everything that makes you vulnerable. So either way, whether fairies or human strangers, I don't think it's a good idea. So which doesn't mean fairy doors, I wouldn't place them inside my house. I would have like a space, an altar, which I do have. And I have this convention, that's it's there. When I want to invite a fairy ally to come in, I'm going to create that sacred space, that special space, and put there aromas and flowers and things that I know that specific ally likes. And I'm going to make an invitation and let's have a seat, and enjoy a cup of coffee together. There are fairies who, for example, dwell in the house, the so-called, house fairies, and every culture has those as well. They don't need invitation. They're built-in fixtures of the place. I only need to take care of them and be respectful and leave out offerings for them, and that's their places right there on the mantle. And that white crystal at the center is something for them. They use it as a portal, actually, to move through in my environment and theirs. And then we have the others that are related to the land, or from even farther away, that use fixture in the land to travel from, I don't know, maybe Ireland or Denmark or Norway, or Romania. So in putting out fairy doors, first of all, fairies can shift, they can change in size. So we're talking about beings who, yes, they can appear in a human, very material, tangent body, but they can also, and it's probably easier for them and more common occurrence, to appear like disembodied, like an energetic form. So for them, if they come through in energetic form, it doesn't matter if you have like, the Paris Arc de Triomphe, or you have a door that's 10 inches tall. They will take it as a gateway, as access, and they can fit through. So I would, if you really want to have that in your garden, I think it's fine. But both the bigger portal, I love that idea to have. I have something like this when I'm moving through these two trees. It's natural in my case, but I dedicated it to the purpose. When I'm moving through, I'm like, okay, now I'm traveling, I'm entering a different dimension. This is magical time, magical place. So just dedicate it, do some cleansing, do some warding around the door, check in what herbs, what crystals your allies would enjoy, and put those there, and like an invitation, hello, come in. But also what crystals, herbs, or other apotropaics would keep the unwanted people away.
And you said lavender. I remember that.
Yeah, it's in the book. So
Yeah.
lavender, that's very interesting with lavender, and I wanted to touch on this since last time. This was a Mediterranean thing. So lavender, farther in the Mediterranean, more into the like Italy, France, you have some more southern areas. But then and that might prompt the thinking, okay, that's only if I want to propitiate or invite, fairies from that culture, which is true up to a certain point. With the climate changing, we have lavender growing abundantly now in Germany. And it has been acclimated even further north. So it basically grows everywhere. So the spirits of the land and fairy beings recognize it. So yes, lavender, it has become pretty universal because of plants and herbs and the spirits themselves keeping up with the changes in climate and society and how things are done nowadays. So yeah, lavender.
So lavender. Okay, I want to get back to this because I mean, a lot of people will say, "But I don't have room for a garden." And you grew up in a space where you couldn't have something like that and still found a way to celebrate. So I want to discuss about um
Sure.
um but first, a question from Robin. Would fairies take on any kind of values and beliefs of the societies or people that are around them?
This is a very interesting one. I think this goes a little bit both ways. We tend to assume that our neighbors or the other people would like the same things that we like, and they do the same things as we do. So that's a little bit of reflective. There's a little bit of a reflection of that. But on the other hand, if we read the lore, back to the second R research, when we read the lore, we find out that the fairies in their respective cultures, they very much mirror the culture that they're associated with. For example, in Iceland, we have the stories about the Huldufolk, the hidden people, and in their vast majority, they live as farmers. So they have their own fairy farm animals that occasionally they would send one or two over, and they would breed with the human farmers' animals, yielding to magnificent, very beautiful, productive specimens. So they tend to live their lifestyles, they tend to have lifestyles that fit the culture, the human culture where they are. We hear, like in Irish stories, we hear about fairy beings, fairy people showing up to like farmers in the field or craftsmen in their workshops, and fairy being complaining, can you please fix this thing for me because it broke? And then the human, without realizing this, actually talking to a fairy, fixes the plow or the hammer or whatever it is, and then gives it back. And then they realize that that wasn't a regular human being. And usually they're very generous, the fairies. I mean, they can be very generous for help received. They will reciprocate. So there's a code of honor that in that regard, it's not always 100% reflective of the human culture, because their code of honor and keeping promises and rewarding, not feeling in debt to someone, they have far higher standards than humans do.
Which is why I think when I live in a weather imagined, weather real world. I don't care if it works. I think that even non-believers would benefit by living the fairy faith lifestyle, and the fact
Oh
that
yeah.
it does reflect kindness and responsibility and all of those things. That there are a lot of good people in the world, and I meet a lot of great people here on Fika, but in general, and maybe it's just the internet that makes us believe so, but maybe that's not
I
as
think
common.
so.
Yeah, I think maybe the
I
internet,
think so.
which they would probably be using, as I pointed out before, the internet. I think, we come through with some good ideas, and why wouldn't they take a part in those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's and speaking of values, fairies really value. I mean, and this comes from the second R research. Um, they value people who are intelligent, who are like the problem solvers, people who are bold, honest, daring, within limits of respect. I mean, daring doesn't mean being disrespectful. Being courageous doesn't mean, how to say, provoking
Yeah, it's
the
not.
fairy. So yeah.
We have this strange, perverse idea of what strength is, I think. And, even everything is misinterpreted by that. Like, asking a question is a good thing. You
Yeah.
learn, but either people take it as you're asking that question because you're testing them, or you don't think what they're saying is right. Or that if you have to ask a question, they would never ask a question because that would mean they were inferior some way. That somebody isn't that true though? All around questions.
You're telling my life story a little bit. I mean, okay, that sounds way more dramatic than it actually is. But no, I have, and especially over the past 2 or 3 years, I came across these things repeatedly. With me, why didn't you ask? And then, yeah, but if I would ask that, it would look like I don't know, and I don't want to feel inferior. And I'm like, the only stupid question is the question that's not being asked. Ask. You're not going to look in any way less than. If anything, asking questions makes you look interested and curious. And I believe this is something that fairies appreciate from my own experience, the curiosity, the desire to learn. Now, of course, it depends how is this expressed, how is it phrased, because if you go there and you feel that they owe you that bit of knowledge, that's not the right attitude. But if you go there like genuinely, and then typically something, oh gosh, so this is really important, the idea of contracts and fulfilling promises. If fairy beings, so they're more particular about this than most of human friends would be. If they grant you something, they expect, and I cannot emphasize this enough, expect a reciprocity for you to reciprocate. So from the very beginning, there might be some contractual type of, kind of transactional type of interaction.
And you may not even be aware that you made.
You may not be aware. So this is something also, the double, the fine print is very, very characteristic of interaction with fairies. They don't do it because they're mean or they're bad. This is how their world functions.
Well, there's a bit of intelligence needed to be the trickster, and it's about making deals and getting, and learning lessons, and they probably, instead of being upset that you read the fine print, would respect that, because it shows intelligence and a knowledge of the world. So no, but I do respect a lot of what they seem to stand for.
Yeah. I mean,
the fairy
respect and have this kind of, how to say, be the best version of yourself. I think this is the best way to put it. Be the best version of yourself. No fears. Oh, I'm going to look like, or what would the other person say? No, this is like being honest and best version, authentic version of yourself. So
it is.
And read the fine print.
Read the fine print. In Newfoundland, Robin says, most stories I've heard are of mischievous fairies disguising themselves as sparrows and animals, luring children away into the woods.
Whoa, you're talking about me here.
I was going to say, Daniela, do you have any input?
The fact that, okay, Robin, so the fact that I'm here is, it means that one, I was lucky. Second, they weren't really bent on kidnapping me that day, and my grandmother was like super well equipped to handle the situation, because in my book, I'm very familiar with Newfoundland lore. I love it. I love Barbara Rietti. So it's the PhD thesis written about fairies in Newfoundland. It's a book, and it's called Strange Terrain. I warmly recommend it. In Romania, sometimes fairy appear, they take the shape of cute animals, and they will entice, children or young people, to play. Or they would appear like beautiful horses. And if it's a young man or, young woman, and you want to tame the horse and you want to ride it or bring it home, they would take you further and further into the woods. In my situation, it was a child. Okay, so a child appeared, and I'm aware in Newfoundland stories, in Barbara Rietti's book, there is the story of this boy whose mother saw him playing with other children, but the whole thing looked so off. And the more she was trying to get close to him and call him, the more the boys would kind of group around her son and pull him farther away. And the boy was like in trance. He couldn't hear his mother. He was not responding to his mother. He was like following these boys until I don't remember exactly what she did, but it like broke the trance, and the boy was like very disoriented after that. So the other kids just disappeared, and he was very disoriented. Kids, I'm doing bunny ears here. And he was like, what happened? So something very similar happened to me. So yeah, it's in the book, in the memoirs of a young fairy seer in training.
And if you look over in comments, Heidi from Colorado sent us a very nice message. So thank you, Heidi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, I need to stick my nose into the
all the way.
comments.
Yeah, I had to get new glasses. Things
That's-
happened to my eyes. I could see the comments, and then one day I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I mean it depends. So I have something here, but very
Sometimes they work,
circumstantial.
sometimes they don't.
Very circumstantial. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
So, okay, Robin, we'll do this one, and then we have like 10 minutes because here we go again for Daniela to tell us. So how did your grandmother know about these things, Daniela?
Okay.
You need to get the book, Robin.
So I can give you like the very quick thing. So first, my grandmother lived to be 102, and so she lived a long life and grew up with. So she learned her things. So she was a medicine woman and a fairy seer. And sometimes these things go hand in hand, but sometimes they're separate. Not every single medicine woman is also a fairy seer. So the part of the medicine, being a medicine woman, she learned it from her own, let me make sure, from her own grandmother. So it's very interesting because my mother had zero interest in learning anything. My mother's sister had an interest, but I was the one who really learned the most.
Because she spied.
So it kind of skipped a generation. So she grew up with these. And as far as the fairy seers, she never told me the very details, how it happened. Just from very like broad strokes of the story that I got from her, she was around 11 or 12, so still very, very young. No, younger, like 10, almost like myself. So when she started to interact with these beings, and they showed up themselves to her, and everything was happening around the pear tree of all things in their garden, in their yard. And that's when she went like in a trance state, which scared the heck out of everyone, because she wasn't speaking, she wasn't moving, she wasn't reacting for a number of days. She was like paralyzed, but she wasn't. I mean, she didn't have the body rigidity or anything, but she was like a complete living dead, best description. And she was like this for like 3 or 4 days or 2 days, something to that extent. And then when she came out, like all of a sudden, without anybody doing anything, she came out, and ever since she could interact with fairies, and her job was to actually relay messages for her community, for her family. She knew she lived in the rural area until she moved into the city, town with us. So she would know about when to plant seeds, when to do different things, when to avoid, and including the ability. So her weather magic got really, really good since she started to work in partnership with these fairy beings. So she could like really propitiate rain to come, or avert storms from hitting their small area. I mean, don't imagine that she was doing, I don't know what, but for their area, she was like very effective. So that's how.
And it was with your grandmother. Now, you were not allowed to have fires, right? When you were young? Was that one of the reasons you weren't allowed to have fires? I mean, not you personally. You
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
setting, I mean, just as a general rule.
So as a general, so for example, that's what I was trying to say there. You can have fires to burn your leaves in fall. You can have fires, but to have like a ceremonial fire, like a ritual that would get your neighbor's attention,
Neighbors.
that yeah, neighbors. So that would get unwanted attention. That was not okay.
And so, but you found other ways to do your rituals with your grandmother. Do you want to
Oh, of
describe
course.
that?
Oh, sure. So first of all, what do you mean by fire? That's it's proportion. Fire can be a candle. Fire can be few twigs, few bits of wood that you're burning in a fireproof dish. So it's a matter of scale. We had usually candles because it was like hard to make this. Typically that would be a wood made of a fire made of 4 specific woods, and it was done in conjunction with a specific holiday time of the year. And then there would be offerings placed around this fire and community gathering, and then portions left out for fairy beings, expecting their blessings for different things like crops or cattle, or it was a seasonal festival. But in where I was living then in town, in an urban environment, semi-urban environment with grandmother, there was no need for this. And we didn't have actually the 4 specific type of woods that need to be burned. So she's like, candle, good enough. So we had like a candle or lantern, gas lanterns, and put it on a table with a nice tablecloth, and with the offerings, and would be there and just chill, and then tell stories, and then leave that thing there. We would burn some incense, like
And you
frankincense.
just left water and
Yeah, you left water. So that was like the water, and I remember there were like little loaves of bread being baked, and for variation you can split and put butter in between, or just leave the plain bread on little plates, and 3 glasses, because grandmother had 3 fairy allies that would come together. So would leave like water and glasses with water, and the little saucers with bread, and frankincense was one of her favorite. And we'd leave those. So
in this world, times can get tough, sometimes better. This isn't something that anybody can have a fairy garden. It can be on your porch. It can be on your little balcony in your thing. It can be one pot.
I was about to say,
Yeah,
you can,
if you find something growing up through a sidewalk or something, ask if you can move it to your home, but it doesn't have to cost you anything.
No.
There is no one standing there saying, you have to tithe or you have to give here or whatever. It is simply a something that anybody can do. Okay, so we're gonna take Heidi's question here. Heidi's asks, I would love to ask a question. Of course, we're always here for that. I believe that there are fae here, and this tree that has an amazing energy, and I believe fae are connected to it. It was cut down the other day. I went out later and chit-chatted, told them I had no involvement. How do you believe the fae are adjusting to the tree down? The tree thing was another thing I was interested in. It's not just, what will happen. What do you think?
The fact that so Heidi, I don't know what's happening, but I heard of like several stories these days of fairy trees being damaged, being hacked down by either utility companies or workers not paying attention. So it's happening. It's like an attack on fairy trees, if you ask me. So I'm not saying that's intention there, but it's like really unpleasant and strange coincidence that keeps happening. I think that you did the most important thing, the dialogue part, going there and telling that you are not involved. The other thing that I would suggest that you do, leave offerings. Look what's typical for your area. So probably water is the most, it's the most, valuable commodity thing to offer. So there is no nature spirit or fairy being who would say no to water, especially this is in conjunction with a tree. So pour some water and mention, this is my offering to you, and you just pour it on the ground. This is how traditionally offerings, unless you're offering in your house where you can just pour it down. So then if you're aware of a specific fairy tradition or specific fairy beings there, again, bread, butter, that would also leave nearby, near the stem. That's where it was cut. So this is what I would suggest. Ask them, invite them to communicate. If you can use any divination means, whether tarot cards or anything, runes, ogam, you can communicate.
Pendulum.
Or ask them, pendulum, yes, where, or you can ask them to kind of show in dreams. I'm not good with dreams. I'm a solid sleeper. But if you dream and pay attention to dreams, then tell them to let you know in dreams what else can you do for them, to mitigate the damage. So yeah, and I want to finish that part that we're talking about fairy gardens. The best way to have a fairy garden, and if you move house, that can travel with you. It's like a saucer, for a plant, like a dish for a plant pot, and you can put there. You can make it however you want, whatever. Yes, it's whimsical. This is on the whimsy side, but think that everything that we represent in this world can take on different dimensions in their world. So what you make here, like a miniature, it can be there the size of, the Central Park.
Yeah. So instead of like a little, evergreen you pick up at the grocery store, for them it can be the town tree,
exactly.
Right in the middle of the square.
Absolutely.
And I want, because as a person who has to be careful about things, because of the allergy syndrome, I'm thinking that you could even use a rock garden, because different rocks coming from different places. If you can't handle plants, yes, so
it's my favorite. It is my favorite. Actually, what I do have near the fairy tree in my backyard is a little rock garden. And believe me, it's like the size of a saucer. It doesn't sit on the saucer because it's straight on the ground, but it has few rocks, and some of them are rocks coming from my walks. So it's nothing. And this is how I was guided to do it. I'm like, sure, I want to get this crystal. And they're like, nah, get me that piece of
this is what happened. Yeah, no, because I was going
to
a class that was very affordable, and everybody was bringing in all their gemstones and crystals, and I was like, well, I can't. Gemstones and crystals can get expensive. I can't do this. So just research stones and their meanings, whether they're hag stones or wishing stones, or they just mean something to you in the moment.
I see here Heidi mentioning they like quartz. Well, quartz appears in fairy lore, and there are quartzes that are called, I don't know, fairy something, the fairy stone. So if you feel that they like quartz, and by the way, quartz doesn't have to be clear quartz that you purchase. It could be snow quartz or white quartz that you can find in rock and mountain formations in your area or in an area where you visit. And this is something really, really, really important that I want to say. If you're visiting a sacred site, do not take rocks from there. Get threads, get few bits of grass. I mean, imagine that you go to I don't know, Newgrange in Ireland, and everybody, 1 million people a year, take a tiny bit of a fragment. In few years, there would be nothing left of that monument. So we're not doing fairies any favor, not ourselves. We're not strengthening the relationship by damaging sites that are really special. Get something from a tree, like bark that is falling down. Take a leaf that's falling, the tree's going to grow more leaves. Take some grass or a little bit of soil, but not like splitting pieces from monuments themselves, because
I
that's
that well, that was
the
one of the things
fires.
I wanted to touch on. Like the preservation of these things are the most important things. So when people
Yeah.
take a tree and they tie the ribbons that are of
Oh
synthetic
God.
material and they tie them too
Oh
tight or
God.
put plastic on, this is not using common sense because that will kill the tree. And so that's not good. Use your common sense. You need to preserve these things more than you need to and there's a ton of beaches and the whole world is sacred as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
You know, there's that.
I like Heidi that she says that she has all types of quartzes. Yes, you can make like beautiful quartz collections, and this, if the quartzes are in your area, for sure your fairy people from around would love them. So make all of the arrangements that you want, and you can arrange them nicely around the tree trunk if that's feasible, and if that's not interfering with, I don't know, if it's in a public space, I don't know how that will be, received or regarded or tolerated. And about the trees, when we're going and tie things on trees, that is a very specific Irish tradition, clootie trees. And there were certain trees that were, that relates to healing. So traditionally, there was strips of cloth from the clothing of an ailing person, and these strips would taken to the tree. But there are certain trees, not every tree is a clootie tree, and tie it there, and the intent was to tie it lightly and to be made of a material that will disintegrate quick,
Which all the
because
material did then.
as the material disintegrates, the person gets healthy. So you don't want to put something there that will not disintegrate, because that's your prayer. It's like burning a candle. As the candle burns, you get your wish exhausted, you get your wish fulfilled. So it's very different. So no, don't kill fairy trees by tying things
So the
hard
respect
onto
goes
them.
all the way. Respect nature, respect what other people's sacred
Mm-hmm.
places as well. Share it. You don't have to take everything home. You don't have to own it.
Oh, you're very welcome, Heidi. Yes, and yeah, flowers, grass, sure. Flowers, again, careful if you're in an area that you don't know, because you may be picking up the last living specimen of something that's about to go extinct. So get like few grasses, or if it's buttercups growing there, they're not going to go extinct. So you can surely get some buttercups.
Yeah, no, there are plants that there's a lot in there, and they come up
Mhm.
every spring,
Yeah.
and they're just going to grow anyways. And a lot of those have a lot of wonderful meanings, and to us
Hmm.
too as individuals. And so I probably the otherworldly beings have those too.
And the book that I wrote, the last one, Fairy Herbs for Fairy Magic, that we keep talking about. So this is exactly how to use and what to use. It's all those herbal materials, and it's not just a description of the plants and what they do and in what cultural specific context they appear. The book ends with a whole chapter, with a whole section, suggestions that you can, of course, adapt, how to do specific charms for protection, for
I have that
attracting
quote.
prosperity and abundance, and all that. Yeah.
The purpose of this book is to provide readers with enough information for everyone to adapt creatively rather than imitate mindlessly. And I think this is a lot about the book and Daniela herself. So I had it here. And so that's it. It is very useful. Like I said last time, like a recipe book, you can just grab it and you can just grab it and get your information right away and build on that information with your own experiences because they're important as well as the folklore. Daniela is also working on a book too someday, no date on that. But what she is working on now is a book very much like her well, I guess it's second in the series where fairies meet, only this time between Romanian and Icelandic.
Yes, Romanian Icelandic. That's the next one. So
that's the next one. That's what she's working on now. You can find these at any of your usual book stops, I would think.
yeah, Amazon bookstores. Yeah, I mean, you can go into the bookstore and ask them to order it for you, because it's to be sold in bookstores. Barnes and Noble carry it. Amazon carries it. So yeah.
And the link I chose to put up, because Daniela didn't give me a specific one, was her blog, because it's very interesting. Whispers in the Twilight.
Yes.
I got carried away into the Daniela blog world while I was supposed to be working. And after half an hour, I was like, okay, I came here for a reason.
Yeah, that's very much my personal experience. So yeah, how I experience things, and then you can see there how a path can change.
So thank you, Heidi, and for your questions, and Robin. And
thank you, Robin. Thank you, Heidi.
And Robin also left a nice compliment for us there. And
thank you.
It's always nice for you to show up as well. So I'm just going to end the comments now. And so we can close out. So thank you, Daniela, once again. The hour
thank you so much.
Went right by. So I'll give you a bit of a break before.
Anytime, I'm ready.
You have to understand, in this busy world, sometimes the only place people can meet is
online.
Yes. So
we need to catch up with one another. Let's have an episode on Fika with Vicky.
Okay, this is this is the way it works in my life and my friends. So that, thank you, Daniela.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And take care, and best wishes with this book and the upcoming ones. And once again, people, I love all of her books, but A Fairy Path will break your heart and leave it nice and toasty as well. Thanks, Danielle. We'll talk soon.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. And for the rest of you, next week we'll be visited by Rachel Patterson, kitchen witch, author. She does everything. So that will be Sulis, I think is how you say it. Goddess of solar goddess and spring fountains. I can't find that specific. Solar goddess of the spring waters. I knew I was close. So that is next week. Until then, may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.